everything is out there on social media. And like you said, there's so much information, we don't know which is true, which is false, how much to take seriously. Stage 4 is generally not considered curable. 10 साल से इंजेक्शन ले रहे हैं, गोलियां खा रहे हैं. When can we stop? I say don't.
I think I was manifesting it and it was happening to me. And again, that information overload being a doctor, because I knew whatever could go wrong. It is a very tough journey because you don't know what to do. At sometimes you just want to let go, you want to cry, you don't know what is going around you.
And you have to be strong.
You have a career, you have your kids, you have everything. And plus this additional thing which is very emotionally overwhelming. So what advice do you have for caregivers?
So patients with cancer now don't die quickly. They do linger on.
I think meditation, spirituality also helps a lot, because I feel you get a lot of questions in your mind. Why is this happening to me? Is this karma? Namaste, hello, and welcome to the podcast series, The Healing Conversations. I'm Dr. Sonia Basu, and today I have with me a very renowned medical oncologist who has over 30 years of experience healing patients and helping them navigate their cancer journey. Today, for me, it's an honor and privilege to be having a conversation with her, because not only is she a senior professional colleague to me, she is also my own personal medical oncologist who has helped me in my battle against cancer. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2019, and I had gone to this doctor, and the moment I walked in, I had a lot of questions which she absolutely dismissed all my fears and held my hand and took me along the journey. And today, with more than 5 years of survivorship, I'm here talking to her in this frame. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Shona Nag. Hello ma'am, a
Hi.
very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much.
So ma'am, first things first, we'll be talking about a lot of things, because cancer is not just a medical journey, it's an emotional one as well, and sometimes for some people it just goes on. So first things first, I would like to ask you, how did you choose medical oncology as a profession? I'm sure you could have studied anything in medicine. Why medical oncology, especially when it's such a heavy subject? And what keeps you going day in, day out, motivating people, dealing with hope as well as despair, holding people's hand, having tough conversations with them? How do you do this? Why did you choose this, and how do you do this?
So why did I choose it is a very personal reason. I always knew I wanted to become a doctor ever since I was 8 years old. So I got into medicine, did my general medicine, and started working at the ICU at Inlax Hospital. At the same time, my father was diagnosed with lung cancer. And to be honest, we'd never been exposed to oncology because cancer was not so prevalent or discussed at that time. So it was really with the view of watching him suffer. There were no good drugs. Today, he would have lived for 10, 20 years on immunotherapy, which there was no sight of immunotherapy at that time. So he went through a very tough time, and that's when I decided that maybe I should take up oncology. And just as luck would have it, Inlax was putting in the first radiation machine in Pune in the civil health services. And they sent me to Tata for training. And that's how I got into this whole thing. So that's what started me off. But what keeps me motivated is we probably started our cancer journey with a very few chemotherapy drugs, because I'm a medical oncologist and I deal with the medical aspect of cancer treatment, not the surgical, not the radiation. And we had a handful of chemo drugs. Our patients used to vomit. We didn't have good preventive agents for vomiting. And then we saw this transformation of a whole lot of new drugs, antibodies which act like vaccines against cancer. We saw immunotherapy come in. We saw tremendous supportive care to make daycare chemo possible, coming in the morning, going home in the afternoon, some of them going back to work, oral agents, targeted therapies. So I've watched this kind of revolution in oncology in the last 30 years that I've been there. And every year brings with it new hope, new treatments. So that's one thing that's kept me going. Another thing is patients are living longer, they're living better, they're getting cured. So that gives you an incentive to keep going in this line. So yes, earlier I used to come home and cry because I lost patients. But now with my journey, I've seen a lot. And sometimes they just come 10 years later to say hi, hello. And I'm like, wow, or some of them were young when they were diagnosed.
Yeah.
So they come with their kids.
Yeah.
Or some of them get married and invite me to their weddings. So it's been a very, very rewarding journey. There are times I still feel despair, but there's always hope around the corner. And I prefer to have that attitude when I'm with my patients.
True. How true. Also, ma'am, now that you said that treatment has evolved over decades, now, and then we live in a digital age. We
Yes.
live in an age of information overload, I would say. So many times, patients search a lot on the internet. They end up getting confused. They don't know whom to go to, and many times they even end up, self-diagnosing and going to the wrong kind of people. So how do you suggest they navigate all this information? Whom should they go to first? What should they be really aware of? What are the red flags? When should they seek treatment? I would like you to throw some light on that. as
No,
well.
I think that's very important because everything is out there on social
Yeah.
media. And like you said, there's so much information, we don't know which is true, which is false, how much to take seriously. So, yes, my patients all Google everything and they have these terms that
So
they come
sometimes
with.
you roll up your eyes
Correct.
like, oh my God.
No, I don't.
No.
I don't do that. I don't do that. I suggest credible websites that they can go on.
Yeah.
I write things out for them. There are very questioning types. There are others that say, you take the decision for me. Now, that's also not good, nahi?
Yeah.
Because I need patient cooperation. I need a
Yeah.
buy-in from the relatives.
Yeah.
I need knowledge to be there. So I spend some time literally drawing out things and explaining things ABC-wise. So they get an idea and then I tell them, go back and think about it. I don't insist they take treatment the same day.
Yeah.
I don't treat them, see, they may be not aware of my line. They may not be highly educated, but they are aware and they can think.
Yeah.
So don't treat patients or relatives like foolish people. You can't. They have minds of their own.
Yeah.
Sometimes they go off tangent. They start their alternative therapies or they insist on delaying things or the fear catches hold of them. But then you say, yes, you want a second opinion, you suggest a credible source.
Yeah.
You don't let them run around too much. But there are those that you can't help sometimes.
Yeah.
I have a certain patient who is still running around after 3 weeks for his mother. I know he wants the best for her, but he's gone to Bombay. He's met all my colleagues there. He's gone to Pune. We are all discussing it amongst ourselves. This one said this one said that dose. But in the end, he has to make up his mind and she has to get treatment.
I think it's more of your own decision rather than,
Yeah.
because and especially I think the challenge in our country is there are always too many people involved. There are
Yeah.
families, there
Family
are
saying
friends.
isko milo, wo
Yeah,
family saying
yeah.
isko milo.
I think
But it's the fit. And like one of my colleagues say, आपने गाड़ी कहाँ park की है वो बहुत important है.
Yeah.
And if you park it in the wrong place, you're done for.
Yeah.
All right?
I feel that it's the comfort also. Like, as
It's
a
the
doctor,
fit.
What comfort do you give to a patient?
Yeah.
And when you talk to someone, like I said, when I came to you, the comfort that you gave me, the fact that you're approachable, I could ask you anything, all those things really matter. Because if you feel, that, someone is being very curt with me and someone is being very clinical with me, it doesn't really work for someone. People feel that, will I be able to ask them
No, and
those questions?
I enjoy answering questions because it tells me that they are part of the treatment.
Correct.
And in the West, it's very different. The doctor and the patient are partners.
Yeah, true.
Here, the patient is way below. I don't see why. They have certain questions. I tell them, write it down. Let's share the knowledge that we have. And let me take your preference into account. I can't just say, take this treatment, take that treatment, and don't, because there are certain things, for example, a lady, her daughter's getting married in 10 days, and she wants to attend that before she starts her chemotherapy. That's important for her.
Yeah.
It's important for me.
Right.
It's her milestone. I can't say start chemo today and go all week and, like upset to the... Finish it off. Come back.
Yeah.
Social things are very important for Indians.
Yeah.
Of course, not at the cost of your treatment.
Yeah.
But if it's waiting 7-8 days, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can allow you to go to Vaishno Devi providing you take your tablets with you
Yeah.
and providing you take care of yourself and don't slip and fall anywhere.
True.
So I don't discourage my patients from doing things.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'm a little firm with their treatments.
So, ma'am, coming to that, let's break down the journey. So, from the diagnosis, can you explain more about staging? Because we hear this word very randomly, you know, like people sometimes they hear this कि उनको फोर्थ स्टेज में डायग्नोस हो गया या
लास्ट स्टेज है, कुछ हो नहीं सकता है,
या आपका तो बिल्कुल शुरू का स्टेज है. सो पीपल आई फील नॉन क्लिनिकल पीपल यूजुअली डोंट अंडरस्टैंड द वर्ड स्टेजिंग प्रॉपर्ली एंड व्हाट इज द इम्पैक्ट ऑफ स्टेजिंग ऑन द आउटकम और द ट्रीटमेंट प्लान.
So I think that's an excellent question. Staging is something, so there are 4 stages of most cancers. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 and stage 4. Stage 1 is, I'll give you an example. अगर breast cancer हो या lung cancer हो, the tumor is of a small size, usually less than 2 centimeters and present in the breast itself. And if it is lung, it is less than 3 centimeters and present in the lung itself. Stage 2 is when it's gone little bit outside. For example, breast ke jo bad blood hai, that gets collected in the armpit. So when it reaches the armpit, we call it stage 2. When it goes beyond the armpit to the neck nodes or yahan pe andar to, but in that area, then it's stage 3.
Okay.
And stage 4 is when it goes to organs, jo काफ़ी दूर रहते हैं, bones, liver, brain. So that is a stage 4.
Okay.
Stage 4 is generally not considered curable. So chances of cure in stage 1 are 90%, 95%. Chances of cure in stage 2, and by cure I mean living a normal life up to the life expectancy you would have had you not had cancer. So I'm very firm on this. I'm not just talking of 5 years. I'm talking of a normal life expectancy.
Yeah.
So stage 2 about 80%. Stage 3 drops. It's about 40%, 45%. And stage 4 is supposed to be less than 10%. Lekin, with today's new treatments, especially in breast tumors, patients with stage 4 are living 5 years, 10 years. So every stage 4 is different.
True.
And I have women with stage 4 who are like, कब treatment बंद करें? 10 साल से इंजेक्शन ले रहे हैं, गोलियां खा रहे हैं.
Yeah.
When can we stop? I say don't. You don't stop treatment for diabetes, you don't stop treatment for cancer. While you're well, keep taking it. So yeah, that's what staging means. And we usually diagnose it with CT scans, but instead of scanning the whole body, we prefer to do PET CT, which is a one-shot thing, which picks up disease in all parts of the body. All right.
Ma'am, once you're diagnosed and once you undergo treatment, what do you think? Like, how do you handle their emotional part? Because I'll talk about myself. You know, like you keep the first thing. The treatment comes second.
Sonia, you were a very angry person.
Oh, ma'am.
You were a tough patient for me to deal with.
Everything was going wrong with me. So
yeah, you had a lot of
side
hiccups during your chemotherapy.
Yeah, every side effect that could happen, I think I was manifesting it and it was happening to me. And again, that information overload, being a doctor, because I knew whatever could go wrong was going wrong
but
with
I'm
me.
being frank, I was a little afraid when I would come to visit you कि आज क्या बोलने वाली है और क्या होने वाला है. But your husband was just amazing. And I'm telling you, that really helps to have
that is very true.
down to
I feel
earth partner.
Caregivers play a very important role. I was going to ask you that as well. Like caregivers, how do you have a conversation with them? Like because you know, I feel they also need to take care of themselves. Like I was a caregiver to my father.
Yeah.
You know, my father had lung cancer and his was stage 4. So you know, at times I would feel so bogged down with everything, so overwhelmed.
No, it's
it is a very tough journey because you don't know what to do. At sometimes you just want to let go, you want to cry, you don't know what is going around you,
and you have to be strong.
Yeah, you have to be strong,
and it's emotionally draining because you're so close to the person, and physically you're exhausted because you're running to the hospital and you're running to the doctor.
And
So-
plus, everything is running in parallel. Your own life is not stopping. Nobody is stopping for you. You know, you have a career, you have your kids, you have everything. And plus this additional thing, which is very emotionally overwhelming. So what advice do you have for caregivers? What
So
do you...
I talk to them a lot.
Yeah.
I talk to them alone sometimes, and I'm very lucky because we are part of the NAC Foundation and we have an excellent psycho-oncologist, Rebecca D'Souza. तो वो क्या करती है, when she comes to the hospital, she comes twice a week to Sahyadri, once a week to Ruby, and she sits with the caregivers. वो impromptu एक group बना देगी outside the daycare when they're all waiting because their relative or spouse or whoever is having chemotherapy inside. So they're all sitting there either on their mobile या कुछ पढ़ रहे हैं or they are chatting. So she gets them all together and she does a kind of support group with them. So this is one way where they also feel cared for. Then recently, our foundation tied up with a group from Stanford in America, where two ladies came down and we did a one-day caregiver workshop. And we found out from the workshop that they are so troubled and they are so distressed. And we taught them some coping skills. Because see, patients with cancer now don't die quickly. They do linger on. And there is a point where they have to, the home has to be made into a hospice or a hospital because you can't afford hospital care or there are no good homes which take care of them. Sipla is very, very far away for a lot of people. तो घर को एक रूम को हॉस्पिटल बना देते हैं and it's very, you know, even if you keep a ward boy or a maushi to take care of your loved one, you have to keep a watch. So they need a lot of support from our side. So we try and do whatever we can. But I suggest that they should reach out to each other. They should come and meet some of us to kind of lighten their burdens.
So I feel, ma'am, does, I think meditation, spirituality also helps a lot because I feel you get a lot of questions in your mind. Why is this happening to me? Is this karma? Have I done something wrong? You know, so what do you say to such people? What is your take on it? How does it help even you as a doctor for that matter? Because I'm sure you must be carrying some stories home, like you said initially, that, initially you used to cry. How do you keep yourself detached? Do you practice these things? Do you, like, after a very tough day, go home, meditate for a bit?
So you've touched a very important aspect of my life, and that is I have been a Vedanta student for the last 20 years. I follow Swami Parthasarathy, and we study spiritual texts like the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, but we do it in a very structured manner. It is all English. It is understandable, relatable to normal daily life. And the journey of Vedanta, along with my practice, has made me a better person, I feel, a more calm person, a better oncologist. I am able to empathize without freaking out. I'm able to deal with the worst sort of patients, in the sense the worst sort of cancers, the suffering, without losing my cool, because you need your wits about you and you're dealing with families and you're dealing with terminally ill patients.
Some sort of detachment
and you're seeing death all the time. So to keep yourself a little removed, but yet caring, empathetic, because you do feel it inside. Sure. And it has also helped me perhaps analyze the data a bit better. Because what happens to your mind and your intellect when you're training it with Vedanta is that you're able to understand, break up, and then analyze problems and newer treatments better. Where to use it, when to use it, will this patient benefit from it? So that kind of judgment has become a little sharper.
You get more clarity.
Much more clarity. I'm not saying everybody take up Vedanta, but you're born in a country where it's everywhere. We have spiritual texts which the world doesn't have. I mean, I'm indeed privileged to be born in this country. And while I curse the traffic and I curse the pollution and I curse everything, every Indian on the road, something happens, they will run to help you. The country is amazing with its people, and that has percolated down from the ancient texts. So we just go back a little bit and start it when we are younger rather than older. Today, I feel if I had started it in my 20s and 30s, where I would have been in terms of clarity, in terms of I'm leading life. Life is not leading me. You know, whatever comes, yes, and it will come. Something could happen to any of us tomorrow. So you don't expect the worst, but you're prepared for it. You know, and if the world is a train, you don't have to Velcro yourself and go with that running train. You need to stand on the platform and watch it.
Right.
And that has helped me.
And I think everybody has their own pace
Yes.
of doing things.
It may not be Vedanta.
Yeah,
It may be art of living.
Yeah.
It may be, you know, the Sadguru. It may be somebody else. But get a mentor. Get a philosopher guide. Get a spiritual help. And that helps you a lot.
True. So tell me something. What is one thing which people perceive wrongly about you? So, you know, people assume and it is like totally not true. So let's have some fun.
So
Let's see the real you.
So they think I'm not a fun person.
Yeah, I also thought that. I was very
Yeah.
scared to come to you.
Very.
I was like putting my guards on and oh my God. I
I
don't
have
know.
quite a reputation because I used to.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you something. I
Yeah.
use my temper. I don't lose it.
Yeah.
So I pretend to be angry and shout a little bit because it gets me the results
So you're
I
saying
want.
this on camera, so now people will
Yeah,
know.
but I'm really not feeling that because you know when you get angry and out of control, you regret it later,
Yeah.
and when you don't regret it, you know you're okay,
Yeah.
right? So the fun thing about me is that I love Bollywood dancing.
Oh my God.
And I'm a decent dancer,
Oh
and
my
I
God.
can turn my toes, and I can
Oh my
give the
God.
youngsters quite a run for their money.
And I've got a left foot, so I should start coming.
Yeah, and no. So I do class. I do Monday, Wednesday morning class,
Oh.
and I have a super teacher, and she comes home and we dance together for an hour.
How lovely is that?
Yeah, and that keeps me going. And it all relates back to childhood where my parents would force me to go to these Bharatanatyam classes. And I used to curse them, but now I bless them every single day.
So I think that's also
I
one
did
of
it for
your
10 years and I
Yeah.
absolutely now love the thought. And I just, you know, anywhere there's music, I start moving and my daughter's like, shh, mama, quiet, you know. But yeah, that's a fun side of me that I love.
So that's probably also one of the things which you use to go loose and let loose and
Yeah,
let go.
that helps me a lot.
Yeah.
I buy adult coloring books on holidays and I sit in color.
Oh.
And I feel that my life is full of color.
Oh, how sweet.
And I also love cooking.
Oh.
And whether it's Indian or Western, I
Okay.
love to experiment.
Okay.
Now I don't get enough time, but now that my daughter's back home, I do a lot of that.
Okay.
So these things keep
So
me
that
going.
was a fun side
Yeah.
of Dr. Shunana.
Yeah, and
which
most
even I
doctors
didn't
have
know.
that side.
Okay.
You know, you'll hear about it. Doctors are brilliant performers, stage performers, musicians, artists, painters, photographers. So there's something about art and medicine that go together.
So, ma'am, we'll wrap up the session now. And before we wrap it up, I would like to tell our viewers that we are coming with more such talks on different topics. And before leaving, ma'am, would you like to leave a message for our viewers?
So don't believe everything that is out there on social media. Please verify it. Either go to an oncologist, either go to your family physician, or if you want to get onto sites, there are good sites like ASCO.org, NCCN.org, the Indian sites like ICMR and ISMPO. So these are few sites you can go on to and get really genuine information about cancer. Please take care of yourself. Don't ignore your bodies. Be vigilant, and should you notice any changes, don't be afraid to come to us. We will definitely help you. Thank you for listening in.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out time and doing this. I'm sure it would have helped our viewers a lot. And I look forward to more such conversations with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.